Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants will be on a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. At that time, you would need to press star followed by the number 1, unmute your line, and record your name clearly as prompted. Today's call is being recorded, and if you have any objections, you may disconnect. I'd like to introduce Deborah Rivera. Ma'am, you may begin.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited for today's webinar as this has been a highly requested topic for training. Our session today will focus on the mapping feature in data.census.gov and how to get the most out of it. Our presenter will show you the basics like how to get started with the map feature, useful tips and tricks, but also how to render a map from selected variables and how to create a map from scratch. My name is Deborah Rivera, and I am joined today by several of my colleagues, and we will be providing support for our speaker by monitoring the chat to send you helpful links and also answer as many questions as we can via the chat. But before I hand things off to our presenter, let's just go over a few items. We are recording the webinar today, and all of the materials for this training will be available through the Census Academy website. We will also have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation for those of you who would like to ask a question over the phone line. Just please make sure that you use your telephone to dial into the conference so you can queue up and ask your question over the phone line. We ask that you please ask questions that are related to the topic of today's presentation and that you are mindful of the information that you share over the line and also the chat. With that, we again thank you so much for joining us today, and now I would like to hand things off to our presenter, Tyson Weister.
Great. Thank you, Deb, and thank you all so much for tuning in this afternoon for our webinar, Making the Most of Mapping on data.census.gov. I work on the communications team for data.census.gov, and what we're going to focus on today is showing you mapping tips and a live demonstration. So what we have prepared primarily is showing a few tips on screen and then going to the live site to work through a few different examples. We're going to start with a basic example, just how you get started with mapping, and then build to more complex information as we move along. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Then we'll open up with some common questions and then give you a chance to ask all of your questions. So the great thing about mapping on data.census.gov is that they're based on the underlying data tables, and what sets data.census.gov apart from maybe some of the Census Bureau tools, other tools that may have mapping features, is that we have really the full set of data from the most popular surveys and programs from the Decennial Census and American Community Survey. In any estimate that you see in a data table, you can create a map of that estimate across a wide range of geographies on data.census.gov. So with that, there's a lot of information to choose from. The steps of creating a map are kind of what we're laying out right here on the screen. You'll want to make sure that you first find a table that contains the data you want to map out. Once you've found your desired estimate in a data table, we'll want to take just a moment to familiarize yourself with the table layout. This will help you when you go to create your map. At some point in the process, you'll want to select a geography, and then you'll go through the steps to create a map. So these are the steps to create a thematic map, and I didn't put them in numerical order because we offer multiple pathways to create your map on data.census.gov. So you really have some flexibility in the way that you go about this on our site. I do recommend making sure if your goal is to create a thematic map that you familiarize yourself with the table at some point before you create your map. For today's demonstration, what we're going to show today is how to get started with mapping. I'm going to start off with a basic example on average household size from B25010 for all states. Once we've worked with that example, we'll build on this, picking up exactly where we left off, and showing you some of the features that you can use for mapping on data.census.gov. We'll show you how you can edit your geography, legend, and a little bit about navigating the site. Once we've done this basic example and shown you some mapping functionality, we'll show you how you can map data from complex demographic tables. When I say a complex table, I mean a table that has a lot of rows and a lot of columns. Then we'll show you how you can map data from economic tables. The layout of those tables are a little bit different than the layout of our demographic tables, and that means that there are different sets of options for you when you create your map. And our first 4 examples will show you how to create thematic maps. So the end goal would be mapping a single data variable across your geographies. In our 5th and final example, we'll show you how you can use the map to select your geography and then drill into some of the table data that are available. So let's go ahead and get started with the basic example, creating a map of average household size from table B25010 for all states. So this is an example when you know your table ID in advance. We'll show you other ways that you can search for data in this webinar, but the focus really for the webinar is going on mapping. In some cases, you may know your table ID ahead of time. And this example actually comes from a real use case from a data user who wanted a map of average household size. The first thing you'll do is go to data.census.gov. We do recommend using Google Chrome, so when you're on the Chrome, you'll get the best speed and performance. When you're at the landing page here, there are, of course, a variety of ways you can go about pulling up your table. I'm going to choose the advanced search to start us out. And we know our table ID. We want average household size from a particular table. Right under the advanced search heading, you'll see a text box that says table ID in it. So we'll type our desired table, B25010. And then we'll select our geography. I'm going to use these filters here that appear on the left-hand side of our screen, clicking the word geography, choosing the state level, and then click the checkbox for all states in the United States. You're always looking for a checkbox as a final selection. When you check the box, you'll also want to make sure it's been added to the bottom of your screen as a selected filter. When we're happy with our selection, we have our table ID and the geography. We'll click Search in the lower right. And remember, we always want to first find the table that has the estimate that we want to map. So I'm going to click on Tables just so we can view this across our screen. What we can see here is that this table provides data for average household size in a couple of different ways. So the very first row of the table provides average household size for total housing units that are occupied. So in Alabama, we can see there's an average of 2.52 people per occupied household. This table also gives us average household size in the second row for people who own their homes, and in the third row, average household size for people who rent the home that they live in. As we scroll across the table, we can see it's a pretty basic layout. There is an estimate and a corresponding margin of error, and then we get data for the additional geography as we scroll to the right. So now that I know what I want to map out, it's average household size. It's in the first row of the table, and the table really only has one mappable column for the estimate. So pretty basic layout. We'll go ahead and click Map in the upper left. And what you'll want to do from here is just verify a couple of the selections. First, all of our maps are table-based, so you'll want to make sure that when you click to Maps, you're still clicked into your desired table on the Maps results page. You know you're clicked into the table because it has the orange bar on the left-hand side of your screen, and it will also be a little bit shaded. The other step you'll want to make sure is that the Geographies drop-down menu is set to your desired area. So we chose the state-level geography, and we only chose one geography selection in terms of the summary level. So the the system's smart enough to know that we want to create a map at the state level, and it's chosen that geography for us. You can choose additional layers on your map from this drop-down menu, and we'll explore that in a later example. And then the last thing that we'll want to do is really make sense of what data is being shown on screen and what are the different options for us to map. At the very top, you'll see in the upper left is the data variable drop-down menu. Currently, it says average household size, total, estimate, and it has a little arrow. If we want to expand this and see the full set of options, you can just click on that menu and see it's laid out in a way that makes a lot of sense, right? The very first row of our table was total average household size. The second row was average household size for people who own their homes. And the third row and the third option in this menu is average household size for people who rent their homes. So I wanted to look at average household size overall. So I'll go ahead and leave that default selected and see that our map is displaying that for us already. So what we can see in the legend in the lower left, just to make sense of this, are the different data classifications. It tells us that darker shades of blue refer to higher average household size. And if you look in the darkest shade of blue, it tells us that that category of color represents states who have an average of 2.71 people per household all the way through 3.08 average people per household. And then the 5 that you see on the right-hand side tells us that out of all of the states we selected, 5 states fit into this category. And you can zoom out in the map and make sure to check out Alaska and Hawaii if you want to see all 5 of those categories. And then the other thing you can do on the map once you've created, of course, visually it helps us kind of make sense of the information in a way that's easier to digest than a table layout and scrolling through all of that data. You can also click on a desired state, such as Utah, and see, as an example, that their average household size is 3.08. So when you're working with basic tables, creating a map is actually pretty easy. You just select your geography, browse the table carefully, and then choose the data variable. Next, we're going to move on and show you in the second example how you can customize your map. In this case, we're going to show how you can edit the geography, legend, and table navigation. For this example, we'll edit our existing map to display average household size for all counties and show you some additional functionality that our maps offer. So navigating back to our site here, you'll notice there's a lot of additional buttons that I haven't gone over yet on the map. One of those buttons you'll see at the top of your map, it says Clear Geos. You'll be able to successfully click this button anytime you've selected a geography using the filters, so those checkboxes to select your geography. When you use that and you click the Clear Geos button, it's going to wipe out all of your selections on your map. And then when you're on the map's results page, you'll see, you're on the map's results page when it says filter and download in the upper left. And then it has on the left-hand panel options to choose a selection map and one or more table IDs. So we're in the map's results page. When you're here, you can click the filter button to add a new geography. So we go ahead and wiped out our states already. Now we can select county, and you see it looks very similar to what we saw on the advanced search. This is one of the examples where I was mentioning there are multiple pathways to create a map on the site, and you have different orders you can do things in. So here we'll choose geography, county. It offers options to drill into individual states, and we see the checkbox at the top. We want all counties in the United States. So I check the box. We see when we scroll up, it's been added as a selected filter. And then when you're done selecting your geography, just go ahead and click in the upper right that chevron that says done. This is going to minimize this view so we can actually see the map. As soon as we made that selection, the site was working in the background to call that data in real time, and we'll notice 2 things right off the bat. One, we selected county, and the site was smart enough to know that we wanted county also reflected as the geographic layer on our map instead of state. So we're seeing counties on the map. The other thing that you'll notice is that a lot of the counties are actually blank. So we'll look at this in just a little bit more detail. At the top of your map, you'll see the number of geographies that it's showing data for. Right now, we're seeing 840 geographies that we're seeing data for. Now, we selected all counties. When you're working with data tables from the American Community Survey, you'll want to make sure that you're paying attention to the product drop-down menu in the upper right and seeing whether that says 1 year or 5 year. You can go ahead and click that drop-down menu. The 1 year estimates are available for selected geographic areas that have 65,000 people or more. The 5 year estimates are available for all geographies regardless of the population size. So I'm going to switch that to ACS 5 year. And it's going to work in the background to pull data for all counties. And now we see what we expect, color shaded in for all the counties. And when you look at the top, you see 3,220 counties that we're getting data for. Now I wanted to show a little bit of additional functionality when you're on the Maps results page. In the upper right, you'll see a button that says Customize Map. We're going to go ahead and click that button. And as soon as you do that, you'll notice your legend has moved from being displayed on the map itself to showing in the left navigation panel where you previously saw table IDs. If you want to create additional customizations, look for the settings icon and click that. And then a few additional options will populate. These options allow you to make some changes to the way the information is displayed on your map. We can change the color palette. I really like the blue, but orange is one of my favorite colors, so I'm going to scroll down and choose this color palette for orange. There's a lot of different options to choose from. I like orange because I like the color, and then this particular color palette is nice because I can easily distinguish between the different colors on my map that help me make sense of the data without having to think about it very much. You can also change the number of data classes. So by default, you're always going to have 5 different colors in your map that have categories for different values of data. You can increase or decrease that level of detail. I'm going to click the data classes drop-down menu and change it from 5 to 3. And this just creates kind of a simpler categorization of views. You know, I had 3,000 counties displayed at once in 5 different colors, kind of a lot of information to digest. So that's why we allow you the options to make some customizations to the way that you're seeing information on screen. So this just helps me visually see for the highest category of counties with average household size, it's between 2.9 people and 5.14 people per household. There are 271 counties that fall into this range, and I can see visually on the map that those counties with the darkest shades of orange tend to be located in the most part in parts of the western United States as well as the southern United States. And then the final customization option is the classification type. You can click into that drop-down menu and change between the different types. When you do those changes, it will change the way that the classification data value ranges appear in your legend. I'm just going to leave it at natural breaks. It's the most popular option. And a common question we get when people go through the steps to create their map, they want to be able to maybe save that information for later or print it. We haven't really officially built all of the, functionality in order to print it and included a print button. But in the meantime, one of the tricks you can use is press Control-P in order to print your map. You'll want to make sure before you do that everything's displayed on screen exactly the way you want to print it. So you're zoomed in on screen exactly how you want to be, and it's centered to where you would like to have it shown in your print. Whatever you see in the bottom portion of your screen, when you press Control-P, you'll notice that that's what's going to populate when it loads this print preview for you to print the information out. And then one of the other things we wanted to show, that really wraps up what you can do for mapping, but there is a View Table button that you can click in the Customized Map view. And when you click the View Table button, what this gives you is really the unique functionality on the site to get a table of just one estimate, regardless of how many estimates are in the data table. So we're looking at total average household size across all the geographies we selected. You can click the column header in order to sort this information in ascending or descending order. So just another great tool from the map view for you to be able to kind of digest this information and identify different areas or work with the data off the site. You can right-click this as well and export if you'd like to look at this information and save it into Excel. Now I'm going to click the chevron that says Done and show you just two more things that you can do before we move on to our next example. One is just how to navigate between the customized map view and the initial map view we got to. If you look for, when you're in the customized map view, you'll see the table ID in the upper left, and then you'll see a link that says a map just beside it. When you want to go back to your previous view, go ahead and click that link, and that takes you back to the initial view we got to. Again, customized map. To get deeper, map in the upper left next to the table ID to go back one level in the navigation. And then I wanted to click here on Table on the map. So previously we had looked at View Table. That lets you get that one estimate that we chose in our data variable dropdown. When you click on Table, it's going to take us to the table display. And I just wanted to point out two things. One, we make it very easy to navigate between our tables and maps. And then the second thing is this message that you see on screen. So we selected over 3,000 geographies. When you select a lot of geographies, especially when you're working with larger tables, you'll hit that limit sooner. They may be too large to display on screen, and you'll get this message that says, sorry, that table's too large to display. Some people see this message and, interpret it as an error message and aren't exactly sure what to do with it. They think maybe they've done something wrong. It just means that the table's too large to show, but you can still do other things on the site, like download the table, and we just mapped the data. So even if you're getting this message, before you get to the map view, do know that you'll be able to create a map with your selected geography. The only caveat is that you'll want to have familiarized yourself with what the table looks like, maybe just in its default view for the United States, so you know what you're working with. So now let's move on and talk about, we showed you how to make a very basic map from a simple table. Many users want to work with other types of data tables and are overwhelmed with the options that are presented to them. So we're going to devote 2 examples to make sense of this. First, mapping data from complex demographic tables. We showed in our last example how you can create a map when there were 3 data rows in the table and 1 column. In some cases, particularly for American Community Survey tables like subject tables or data profiles, when you click into the data variable dropdown, you'll see a lot of options. This example in the screenshot for DP04 has 286 different data variables to choose from. While that may seem overwhelming, the good news is that there is a pattern to the way these data variables appear in the drop-down menu. One of the patterns is when the rows are the primary way that the data variables are organized and the columns are secondary. So this is an example showing this from data profiles, or what you'll see in the data variable drop-down menu on the right-hand side of the screen is that you'll see a set of labels corresponding to the first row. Housing occupancy, total housing units, corresponding to the first row of data that you see in the data table on the left. Then you'll see 2 additional labels, housing occupancy, total housing units, occupied housing units, corresponding to the second row. Within each of these rows, you'll notice that there are alternating sets of labels. The first set of labels will say estimate, corresponding to the first column in this table. And the second set of labels will say percent corresponding to the second column of this table. Another way that the data may be organized is kind of reverse, right? So the columns are the primary ways that data are organized in the data variable drop-down menu, and the rows are secondary. This is primarily how it's done with ACS subject tables. You'll notice when you go to the data variable drop-down menu, you'll get a long set of lists. First, you will see one set of labels that all begin with the word total. Those labels correspond to the first column. Then when you scroll about a third of the way through the list, you'll see a second set of labels that say below poverty level, corresponding to the second column. And when you scroll about 2/3 of the way through the list, you'll see a third set of labels for percent below poverty level, corresponding to the third column, as you probably guessed by now. Within each of these set of labels, the data are organized in the same order that they are in the rows on your table display. So we'll keep those patterns in mind as we're mapping in this next example. Here I've done just a little bit of research and seen at the county level for my county, the poverty level is 12.6% in Hamilton County, Tennessee. While it's great that we have this information at the county level, the benefit of the ACS and of mapping is that you can look at this in smaller geographic areas within the county. So we're going to take a moment to do that just now, looking at percent poverty for all census tracts in Hamilton County, Tennessee. Even if you're not familiar with what census tracts are, the great thing is we can explore that visually. So let's go ahead and navigate back to the site. I'm going to click the U.S. Census logo in the upper left. When you're creating maps, I also recommend, in general, just clicking the reload button as well once you're on the landing page. It just helps make sure you truly cleared everything out and you get to start fresh. I'm going to go ahead and click on the advanced search. So we'll want to go ahead and make some selections. First, I'm going to choose all tracts in Hamilton County, selecting geography, tract, prompts us for a state. I choose Tennessee, Hamilton County, Tennessee, and then I'll choose the checkbox at the top, all census tracts within Hamilton County, Tennessee. Next, I'll choose a topic, clicking Topics, Income and Poverty, and the checkbox for poverty. You may not be sure which one to, check. You may see more than one relevant option. We just recommend making your best guess, and we have additional tips and tricks for searching in other webinars that we encourage you to explore. But once you've selected your search criteria and you're happy, go ahead and click Search in the lower right. And again, maps are table-based, so you want to find the estimate in the table first and familiarize yourself with the layout. We'll click Tables in the upper left and see there are 175 different results for poverty, so quite a bit to look through. And we can browse through the first option. It's likely to contain what we're looking for. It says poverty status in the past 12 months. And as we scroll through the table, we see an estimate that says percent below poverty level, 31.3% in this particular geography. So it has what I want to map. I'm going to click Customize Table just to look at this across my full screen since it's a larger table and just kind of make sense of the rows and columns. So there's a row for total, just like we saw in the screenshot, a second row for below poverty level, so 1,044 people in the census tract living below poverty, and 31.3% of people living below the poverty level in this tract in the third column. And then it moves on to our other geography. So we know what we want is in the third column, first row. Now let's go ahead and click Maps in the upper left. Just like before, we'll verify we're still clicked into our table ID that contains the estimate we want to map, that it set us to our desired geographic layer, the census tract level, And in most cases, it will automatically zoom you to your selected area, which it did. Right now, it doesn't know that we want to map percent below poverty level, so we need to set that in the data variable drop-down menu. By default, it's just making a map of the very first estimate from the data table. So I'm going to click the data variable drop-down menu. It's the first drop-down menu in the upper left. And we see, as we scroll through, a set of labels starting with the word total, then a set of labels for below poverty level. So it's telling us that this is organized primarily by the column. We had a column for total, column for below poverty level, and a third column for percent below poverty level. And we know that within each set of labels, they're organized in the same way that the rows were, and we wanted the first row. So we want this label percent below poverty level, population for whom poverty status is determined, estimate. Go ahead and click that, and it will update our map. So we can see that these census tracts with lighter shades of blue have lower poverty rates, and the areas with darker shades of blue have higher rates of poverty. So it was 12.6 overall for the county, but my legend shows that for different neighborhoods in the county, that ranges anywhere from 2.2% all the way up to 49.4% of people in poverty. We can click the different areas and see the values of the particular tract or the percent of people below poverty. And then visually, you can make sense of trends. You can see the areas clustered in the city where poverty is higher. If you were trying to reach out to these populations, maybe they're populations that you have services for, this would be a great tool to help identify those areas. And you can also see interesting trends such as neighborhoods next to each other where poverty rates are drastically different. Moving on to our next example, now that we made sense of how to choose data from complex demographic tables, let's talk about how you can map data from economic tables. First, I want to talk about two things for those tables: non-key dimensions and data variables. So in general, the way that economic data tables are laid out are different from the way that demographic tables are laid out. So because there's different table layouts, there is different mapping options. One of the things you'll want to pay attention to are what we call non-key dimensions. So these are the categorical variables that allow you to specify the categories of information you're interested in getting output for. We can see in this table from County Business Patterns, there are 3 categories of variables that are non-key dimensions shown by these 3 columns. So you have different options to choose: the industry code, what type of legal form of organization, and the employment size of the business. And by these 3 columns and all of the different possible values, it results in a unique row for that data table. So for the United States, when you multiply all of the possible values for these 3 columns, you get 1,410 possible rows of data. For your non-key dimensions, they're usually in the left-hand side of the table. When you go to the map, what you'll notice that you didn't see in demographic tables are additional drop-down menus that appear at the top of your table. These appear automatically based on whatever economic data table you're mapping, and they allow you to specify exactly what data you want. You can click each data variable drop-down or each non-key dimension drop-down menu and choose what you want. So in this example, I've clicked into employment size of establishments, and you can specify whether you want to map for all businesses regardless of the number of employees they have, or narrow your analysis down to certain size of business based on how many employees. For each non-key dimension, you will get data variable output. And these are the columns that appear on the right-hand side of your table. They are usually continuous variables where you will see numerical values to represent the output that you're getting. In some cases, there are categorical variables that are also data variables, but those are more so for data quality indicators. Talk more about that here. All of those data variables, you'll see them in the drop-down menu in the upper left, just like we did for the ACS table. You'll be able to click and specify which data variable you want to map. Do know that only the continuous data variables are supported on our site right now. Those categorical variables are not supported, even though they do appear in the drop-down menu. Shouldn't be a huge deal because those are primarily for data quality indicators. Most people want to map out the actual data itself and not the quality indicator. So let's take a look at this using the example from the same table we just saw in the screenshot, County Business Pattern Table CB 1900 CBP. We're going to map out data for the total number of accommodation establishments, including hotels and other accommodation businesses, across all counties in Florida. Going to the live site, we'll clear everything out, click the U.S. Census logo in the upper left, and press that refresh button for our browser just to make sure we reload everything fresh from the start. And here in this example, I'm going to go ahead and search by table ID. Typing CB 1900 CBP, press enter. We want to make sure the data table has what we're interested in mapping, and we want to familiarize ourselves with the layout. So we're going to click Tables first. And then I'm going to choose Customize Table in the upper right just to see this across my full screen. This is what we saw before. So there were different meaning of NAICS codes. You can click and explore all of those possible values of what's shown to you just in the default view. You can, within each NAICS code, it will provide data for the legal form of organization. So you can look at whether that particular business is considered a partnership, nonprofit, government, and other types. And within each of those categories, it also tells you how many employees the establishment has in terms of a range of looking at that data. So our non-key dimensions are on the left. Each of those results in 1,400 rows. And we scroll to the right, and we see our data variables. On the right-hand side, we can look at this data for number of establishments, which is what we want for accommodation industry. It also provides annual payroll, first quarter payroll, and number of employees. One thing we haven't done yet is select our geography. You can do that from this customized table view by clicking the Geos button. And one thing I like about selecting the geography from this step is you can choose geographies that are compatible with the table you're already clicked into. What you'll do is turn on the summary level toggle. Areas that are compatible with your table are clickable. Incompatible areas are grayed out, so it makes it very easy for you to see what your possibilities are. I'm going to choose county, and we wanted all counties in Florida. Florida, check the box, all counties in Florida. And I'll click the close button in the lower right. And now we're ready to create our map. So we'll click Maps in the upper left. Like before, make sure we're still clicked into the table ID that we asked for, that it sets the geographic layer to the county level, and it zoomed us into our selected geography, which it has done. We see those drop-down menus at the top for each of the 3 non-key dimensions. I wanted to get all establishments within the accommodation sector, and right now I see the default is that it's providing me data for all sectors of the economy. So I'm going to click into 2017 NAICS code. There is a search bar at the top, so I'm going to type in accommodation. You could type that in, you could type in 721, and it will narrow the list of results for something that's more manageable to choose. So I click the result 721 accommodation, and it updates our map. Now I wanted to leave legal form of organization for all establishments, and I want data for all establishments regardless of how many employees they have. So I'll leave those 2 set as the default. The last thing is to choose our data variable. The default for this table was number of employees. So I click the data variable drop-down menu, and I wanted number of establishments. I choose that data variable, and we can see it's updated our map. We can scroll in and click on a county. As an example, Miami-Dade County, Florida has 491 hotels and other accommodation establishments. Now, the last 4 examples that we walked through were how to create thematic maps. Another great functionality of the site is you can use it to select your geography through a selection map. This is a screenshot showing that process for Block Group 1 in Census Tract 1874. If you've ever visited the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee, you've actually been in this block group. So let's show you how you can select it using the selection map. Do know that this is a great alternative to selecting your geography through those complex filter panels, but it can only use about 70 geographies that you can select. So it's not great if you want to select a ton of geographies, but it can support quite a few. Going to the landing page, the first thing you'll want to do is just run a blank search. And in this case, we actually want to start at maps because we want the selection map. So you'll click maps in the upper left, and then make sure on the left-hand side, the orange bar is selection map. Now we need to specify that we want the block group level of geography as the layer on our map. We'll click the state. And what you can do is scroll through. There's a lot to choose from. So one other thing you can do is press Control F and type a keyword like block and see there is a match for census block group, which is what we want. So we'll click that option. Right now, it doesn't know we want to go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's just zooming us into block groups in the middle of the map in Kansas. So what we'll need to do is zoom out and then manually scroll and zoom back into our desired area. So we wanted Milwaukee County. And then from here, what you can do is just scroll through the different areas and select the block group that you're interested in. I've kind of lost my place for the exact block group I wanted to show you, but you can select any block group. It was kind of arbitrarily chosen anyway. So the nice thing about the selection map is you can zoom into your area, and the further you zoom in, it's going to show more streets on your map so you can make sense of what you're looking at. It's also going to show you labels as you zoom in further. So we selected block group 1 in Census Tract 144. You can continue this process to just visually select the block groups that are of interest to you, click them and choose select. And if you want to select them in bulk, you have a rectangle selection tool. Just click in the upper left where it says select, and it has the picture of the rectangle, and your cursor is going to change from a hand, and it's going to allow you to draw a rectangle. So here I'm going to draw a rectangle. Any of those areas that were included in the rectangle or touched the rectangle will be added to my selection, and you'll see that they're added to the selection by this shade of blue. When you're done with the rectangle selection tool, just go ahead and click that icon again in the upper left, and that's going to give you the hand icon, which allows you to grab and scroll across your map again. If you inadvertently added block groups that you did not want to add, go ahead and click on your map and choose deselect. I'm going to select these two options just to remove them. And here's the area that I want to get data for. So it's just a really great tool if you prefer to visually explore what you're interested in. From here, when you want to get the Census Bureau data tables for this selected area, you'll want to make sure to click into the single search bar and navigate back to the advanced search page. When you've done this, before we get there, just to count, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We selected 9 different block groups. Go to the advanced search. You'll see the geography selection is maintained. From here, you could add in a table ID, or a topic filter. Here I'm just going to add in a filter really quickly for race and ethnicity, and then proceed with your search. You'll click Tables in the upper left, and then choose a particular table title to get data for, and you'll see that you're getting data for all of the geographies you selected in the selection map as you move across the table. Great. Just to wrap up with a couple common questions before we open for your questions. One question is, how can I see more than one layer on my map? We have not built that functionality yet on data.census.gov, but you can do that for reference map purposes using TigerWeb. We've included a link to their site right here on the slide. Another common question we showed today, how you could create maps on data.census.gov. We have lots of users who use ArcGIS and other mapping software and would like to create maps using their own software. We do not currently have the ability to download shapefiles directly from our site, but our geography division has put together a very helpful web interface. They also have more download options through the FTP site. So if you need some information on that, there are some links that walk through it on this slide. Folks that are downloading shapefiles often want to download the Census Bureau statistics on things like population, income, and poverty, and then match that up to create a map. When you download the data from data.census.gov, you'll notice the GeoIDs in our download have some additional characters just to give you some more information about the geography level you've selected in comparison to what you get from when you download and look at the GeoID from the shapefile. So if you want to be able to match that up, what you'll want to do is delete everything from before US and including US, and just keep the characters that appear after US. We have a formula in Excel in the FAQ at the bottom that walks through this process. And lastly, somewhat related to mapping, how can I find a list of geographies that a particular address falls in? We do not have that functionality on our site, but there is a geocoder as one option that you could get this information. It's really as simple as putting in the address you want data for, looking at the results you get, and paying attention to the name part of each section. And then you can go ahead and select that geography if you want to get the statistics and population on data.census.gov for this area. And of course, everything that we do on our site is based on your feedback. If you have ideas on how we can make the site work better for you, please let us know by emailing us at cedsci.feedback@census.gov. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Deb, very quickly before we open up for questions.
Great. Thank you, Tyson. So in a few moments, we will begin our live question and answer session. Just remember that you need to be dialed into the telephone conference to queue up to ask a question. I just sent that telephone number via the chat if you'd like to access it. And before we open up the lines, I would like to ask that everyone spare a quick 3 minutes to fill out the evaluation survey for our webinar today. You can do so now using the link that we're going to send through the chat. And you can fill that out as you're listening to the question and answer session, or you can access the survey through the pop-up window that comes up on your screen as you exit the WebEx event. And please use that opportunity to tell us how we can improve our webinars and what topics you would like covered in future webinars. One final reminder, please note that we will only be addressing questions that pertain specifically to today's topic. If you have questions about navigating the main data.census.gov platform or decennial census data releases, please feel free to reach out to one of the 2 emails that are listed here. If you are a member of the public, please reach out to the Center for Enterprise and Dissemination. And for members of the media, please contact the Public Information Office. And with that, operator, can you please queue up or open up the lines for questions?
Yes, thank you. At this time, to ask a question, you may press star followed by the number 1. That is star followed by 1. Please unmute your line and record your name clearly to be introduced. And one moment, please, for the first question.
Great. And as we're waiting for questions to queue up, we just had a couple of additional information we wanted to share with you all here. Just 1 second. Let me share my screen. One of the items we wanted to bring to your attention is that we have the opportunity for you to sign up to email updates directly related to data.census.gov updates. So as we have new releases, this is a great way for us to stay in touch with you and notify you of that. Just visit the link on the left of this slide. And what we showed today was very specific to mapping. If you're interested in additional resources to learn how to use data.census.gov, please visit the link in the upper left or click the Help button. Here you'll see recorded webinars across the variety of data.census.gov topics, as well as answers to your FAQs, PDFs with step-by-step instructions, and short videos.
And thank you. We did have a couple questions. Our first one is from Elvisa. Your line's open.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the webinar. I was not able to join you, visually, so I'm just going to make sure that when I can download, the WebEx is the only program that you use for me so that I can see this visually, or should I just go to data.census.gov and then I'll be able to walk back through what you said today?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So a couple of things. We will have the webinar slides available. They're generally posted on the same website of census.gov where the advertisement for this webinar occurred, so you'll be able to follow those links. It does take sometimes about a week or so in order for those slides to be available, and they'll walk step-by-step through everything that I showed on screen if you weren't able to catch it or just want to look back for it, as a resource. We'll also, sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks or so, post a recording of this webinar as well, and that will not require you to log into WebEx. It will show the recording that you'll be able to access through a YouTube link, so you can follow along visually through this.
Okay, James. All right, I understand. So thank you so much.
And thank you. We have a question from Thomas. Your line's open.
Thank you. As a thumbnail, I'm an insurance broker in a small personal lines and small business insurance agency. And I was wondering how I could utilize some of this mapping information to do some direct mail to potential clients sometime in my future. If this is something that takes too much detail, either someone could either email me or send additional information to me through a phone link, since I provided that information. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for your question. This was focused specifically on the mapping functionality. So in terms of addressing your question from that standpoint, you wouldn't be able to get any census data directly related. Of course, we protect the privacy of individual households, so you wouldn't be able to get any information for an individual address level, but we would be able to show you information about, for an example, zip codes, if you're looking at data from our economic surveys and programs, and zip code tabulation areas, which are from our demographic surveys and programs, if you wanted to maybe target some of those particular areas in your direct mail program. Zip code tabulation areas, or ZICTAs, would be kind of generalized estimates of the zip code of, mail route, but it would be for a boundary area. So what I would recommend in terms of mapping, we offer the ability to map some of the data out for zip code tabulation area. If you had a target demographic for who you wanted to market your business to, you could look at some of the demographics and map that out on our site. If you wanted more additional information about kind of the use cases for the data and the general types of information we offer across different surveys and programs, I would recommend checking out some of the other recorded webinars through Census Academy, because they often have webinars specifically for business uses of census data that would address more of kind of the data availability and what may spark your interest in how to access some of those tables in the first place.
Thank you for your response. And I understand the accessing previous sessions that you've had would probably be a good idea as well. Zip codes and zip code subdivisions, I know when you're doing direct mail, can be targeted. So having that ability to break down either by a zip code or by even a carrier's route, a route track, would be very helpful.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Karen. Your line's open.
Yeah, thank you. I think they answered my question in the chat, which is, are there differences in functionality in data.gov based on the browser you use? And it sounds like Chrome is the recommended browser. And then my next question is, you said to initiate the search functionality. I think you said Control S as in search, but I couldn't tell if it was an S as in search or an F as in Frank.
Yes, thank you for the question. That was F as in Frank, and that's more of like the browser-specific keyboard shortcut to pull up search functionality across whatever page on the browser that you're in. And the way that it works in that particular view I was showing data.census.gov is that it does find the match in our data variable drop-down menu. So it was Control F. I think that's consistent across browsers, definitely for Google Chrome if you're on a PC. I believe the keyboard shortcut would be Command F if you're on a Mac.
Okay, and you say F as in Frank.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. This was great. Super, super webinar. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you. One moment for the next question. Cheryl, your line's open. You may ask your question. Was it Cheryl? Your line's open. You may ask your question.
Thank you. My question's twofold. One, with regard to looking at the various geographies for households, is this able to pick up energy, such as the number of households using either electricity, wood smoke, or gas? And also, the second part is, does this also have variables that relate to technology or broadband, such as households within a geography area, either by census tract or by census block group, that have access to broadband or computers?
Yes, so thank you so much for your question. Both of those topics are covered by the American Community Survey, so I will show one table here for you just really quick. And if you'd like additional information, specifically on how you can drill in further, I would recommend tuning into some ACS-specific webinars or just emailing us and we can give you some more steps offline. But what I'm just going to show is that data profile this is some of the selected housing characteristics from the American Community Survey, and that would be a great source of data based on your topics that you're interested in and your geographies. So this particular table, DP04, covers a variety of housing topics. We have data on the source of house heating fuel. I think that answers your first question. And as you scroll down further, internet, I believe it's somewhere in this. I apologize. This DP04 has that particular data, and I believe it's DP02. One of the other data profiles has internet access, and it may just be that here it is, computers and internet use. So DP02 at the end of the table has broadband internet subscription and also data on households that have a computer. Both of these tables go down to the census tract level geography, so it'd be a great source if you're interested in this data, but you can certainly drill into both of these topics in terms of more detail by topic and more detail by geography through other tables, and we could, help you offline if you need more information.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I will be contacting you directly.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing no further questions at this time.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. Just wanted to wrap up here with additional notes to leave you on that we do have data dissemination training specialists at the Census Bureau. They host our training academy on census.gov/academy, and here you will find a variety of training resources from across the Bureau, not necessarily related to one individual topic, tool, or survey. They will cover them all. And in addition to this, resource that's available to you, we also have these data dissemination specialists that are located throughout the country. So there will be a specialist assigned to your area. And if you'd like to request a free training, that's what they're there to help you with, and they'd be more than happy for that request. Just simply email us at census.askdata@census.gov or 1-844-ASK-DATA to ask for that free training request. Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's webinar, and we hope to see you again on a future webinar training.
And thank you. This does conclude today's conference call. You may disconnect your lines. Thank you for your participation,